Hey everybody, we are live at Arrowhead Stadium where we're all working very diligently. Sitting here behind this table in the middle of the week, the Chiefs play the Seahawks in Seattle. Guys, if you laugh, then people are not going to believe what I'm saying. Chiefs play Seattle on Sunday in a game that at one point we thought would have no real significance. Turns out it does. It can be one of the deciding factors between the Chiefs getting a 1 seed and a 5 seed. Blair Kerkhoff is all the way down here on this end of the table. Lynn Worthy is beside me, and Sam Mellinger is to the left of me. And I bring up Blair first because Blair is working on a story today. I looked at your notepad earlier. You looked like Rain Man with all these numbers and everything, figured out what the difference between a 1 and a 5 seed is, what it could mean for the Chiefs. So can you break it down not in just pure numbers stuff?
Well, it's 4 seeds. That's the biggest difference.
Thank you for that. Wow, we have really... Guys, that's it. That's all we've got today.
Mind blown.
Yes, if the 1 and the 5 seed seem like the only real options, right, for the Chiefs and the Chargers, because they play in the same division, and one's going to be a division winner, one's a division winner with the best record, one's going to be a wild card team with the best record. Division winner with the best record is the 1 seed. Wild card team with the best record is the 5 seed, and you can make a case that the Patriots' path to dynasty was created by being a 1 or a 2 seed in the last 20 years, because all 8 of their Super Bowl appearances under Brady and Belichick, they came from the 1 or the 2 seed, and what that means is they never had to, play more than 2 playoff games. If you're the 1 or the 2 seed, you only play 2 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl, and if you're the 1 seed, you don't leave home to get to the Super Bowl. If you're a 5 seed, you start on the road with an extra week, the wild card week, and the only way you could be at home for a playoff game is if you host the 6 seed in the conference championship game, and that's never happened in the history of the seeding, which is almost 30 years. So the odds of getting to the Super Bowl from a 5 seed are enormous. From a 1 seed, not so much. You get there. You get there more often than not. 7 times in the last 10 years, the 1 seed in the AFC playoffs has reached the Super Bowl. So that's what's at stake. I mean, playing 2 playoff games at home versus playing at least 2 and probably 3 on the road to get to the Super Bowl.
Well, Blair, what has to happen for the Chiefs to get the 1 seed versus how would they get
well,
the 5?
to get if it starts Saturday night with the Chargers-Ravens game. The Ravens go to Los Angeles, and we know the previous 2 Chiefs opponents. So we've seen both of those teams here recently, and they both played the Chiefs great. Overtime for the Ravens game, and of course the loss last week to the Chargers. So I think it should be a decent game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it should be pretty good. Something that's interesting about that game is Lamar Jackson has started 5 games for the Ravens at quarterback. He has seen the bottom 5 defenses in terms of I think it's scoring defenses.
That'll help your stats.
In the in the NFL in his 5 starts. Chargers ain't that.
Right.
The Chargers have a much better defense. This is the best defense that Lamar Jackson's going to see Saturday night. But you still think that Baltimore has a chance in that game. And if Baltimore wins, the path to a first round bye, a 1 or a 2 seed, and specifically the 1 seed, gets much easier for the Chiefs. They can lose at Seattle if that happens. If both teams finish with the same record, 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2, depending on what the Texans do. If they're 0-2, the Chiefs still have the tiebreaker advantage would have the tiebreaker advantage over the Chargers. What the Chiefs can't do is finish behind the Chargers in the standing. That's what if they finish tied with the Chargers, they're going to be the 1.
And if people are curious, the tiebreaker, potential tiebreaker on 1-2, like between the Chiefs or Chargers and the Texans, is conference record. Is that right?
Yeah, conference record is for those 3.
Okay, and the Texans right now are 8-3 in the conference. Chiefs are 9-2. Chargers are 8-2.
So if the Texans win out and they stay at 3 conference losses, Chiefs beat the Seahawks but lose to the Raiders, then they have the same number of conference losses. So then it goes to a strength of schedule component, and the Chiefs are projected to be better on that in that component than the Texans. Mm-hmm. So that's why, but you still have to allow for the possibility. because Pete Gradhoff, our colleague at the Star, came up with 25 different scenarios for seeding for the not for seeding, but outcomes for the Chiefs. They could technically still be a 2 seed, a 5 seed, and I want to say a 3. They could still technically be a 3
So
seed.
not anything but a 4.
Anything, I think that's right, and it's almost impossible for them to be a 6 seed as well. But anyway, they're going to be a 1 or a 5, and the Chargers are going to be whatever the Chiefs aren't. I mean. It involves ties and all this other thing. So a 1 or a 5 are the most likely scenarios for the Chiefs, and there's a big, big difference between being a 1 and a 5 in the NFL playoffs.
No kidding. Well, the first step in that, of course, is for the Chiefs, other than the Chargers-Ravens game. The first step involving the Chiefs comes Sunday night in Seattle, Sunday Night Football. The weather should be Seattle-y, cold, rainy.
December Seattle.
Everything you want in a football game. And we already have a question about Eric Berry, and we'll jump right into that because I'm looking at a still frame of Eric Berry on my computer because we talked to him this afternoon for about 1 minute and 57 seconds on the dot. Only the third time this season we've talked to him, including training camp. And he said that he feels pretty good, feels like he's bouncing back okay from having played against the Chargers. But the interesting thing is that he didn't really tip his cap to let us know what his snap count, pitch count, whatever would be on Sunday, whether or not he's going to be a full go, limited, play a half, whatever. He only played a half against the Chargers. Sam, you want to weigh in on what you think the Chiefs will do with Eric Berry?
I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play the majority of snaps. You never want to say like 100%, right? But I think
Every single one.
I think he'll be in 80, 90%. I think he's going to play a lot.
So you think that he's just being coy with we're going to figure that out.
No, I mean, I think he legitimately doesn't know. I mean, they could get into the game and feel like he's going to play 90% or whatever. And then if they get into it and he's not feeling it, and I'm not going to make a spirit joke, but if he's just not, if there's something going on in the game that doesn't sit right with him, then he won't. I mean, it's a very we can make literally day-to-day jokes.
He's
and
literally minute to minute,
play-by-play jokes or whatever. But it's obviously a very fluid situation. If they thought that he would have been, we've talked about this before, but if they thought he would have been out anywhere close to this long, IR. So they haven't been right, all season. So I totally get why they're trying to be vague with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then he's not the only DB that there's some vagueness around. Kendall Fuller, we've heard both days this week that he wasn't going to practice, and then in the opening minutes that we were able to watch practice, he was out there stretching with his helmet on, which is more than Eric Berry really ever did when he wasn't practicing. Kendall Fuller had hand surgery. It was reported his wrist, maybe a thumb, and then Andy Reid said surgery on his hand last Friday. He had a protective cast on it, says right one during practice. But if he can't go, Lynn, what's kind of the contingency plan that the Chiefs have for Kendall Fuller if he can only play a little bit, if he can't play at all? How do you think they're going to handle that?
Well, I mean, they haven't really said specifically, but I mean, Tremon Smith seems to be the guy who would be the next nickel type person. You could go Travarius Ward. And I'm not sure how much they would move one of the other guys around, whether that's a Ron Parker. I don't know if they do that or not. I think they've done it in the past, right? That's a spot that he's played. So there's that, and then there's I'm trying to think what did Andy say? Andy just sort of said, yeah, we'd be all right. We've got some guys there, but never really gave a specific name. And I didn't hear if Bob said anything today in his availability, whether or not he said anything specific on what they would do in that situation.
No, he wasn't.
Blair was our tribute that sat through Bob Sutton. Sam, were you in there too, or did you?
Yes.
Oh, wow, we
Sam was
had two.
Grilling Bob Sutton.
Feet to the fire.
What'd you ask him? Or do you want to save it and let it be a surprise on Sunday?
No, I mean, I basically asked, now I'm kind of blanking on which questions I asked and other people, but there are a lot of Eric Berry questions about, I asked, physically, did you think he was the same? He talked about he was surprised at, I don't know if he used the word surprised, but that Eric's reactions were as quick as they were, that sometimes that takes some time. So I asked, okay, reactions, but physically, is he as fast, as strong, as, as agile or whatever? And he basically said yes. It's, pre-injury. That's the way I took his answer.
Yeah.
And then also
But he said it in a lot more words.
He
right?
did. And then I asked basically, like, what the hell happened on those last two drives question. And he talked a lot about penalties.
There were a bunch. Chiefs are the most penalized team in the NFL, by the way.
Yeah.
Have been that way for quite a while.
Yeah, I enjoyed this too. And in that answer, he circled back to, I think it was the second quarter, the phantom call on Dan Sorensen against Gates on the 3rd and 10. And he circled back to that, and like, oh, this penalty, you don't think about it at the time. That's a 4-point penalty. We kicked the field goal, and ended up getting a touchdown. And he didn't say like the play specifically, and just kind of after it was over, I was like, that was a Sorensen play, right? That's what we're talking about, just to be clear. And he was like, I can't answer that. Yep.
Yeah, nope.
That was great. I did enjoy that. I like talking with Bob.
I'm assuming he didn't go into the 2-point play specifics. I mean, because I think they've avoided that all week. Or did he?
And he did. No, he did. He was asked specifically about it. And
Yeah, but
he avoided it as well.
Basically, he just said miscommunication, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
He wouldn't say or didn't say specifically a name, but it sure as heck. I mean, it sure looked like it was Scandrick's guy.
I mean, I feel like
Well,
that's...
I'm trying to think now. Because Phil Rivers, and I did this with the film breakdown, mentioned that play was the same play they ran for the touchdown in the second quarter. And in the second quarter, it was the way they lined up. It was basically they sort of defended it the opposite of the way you would think, because it pretty much had to do with scouting the play. Like, they knew the guy who was furthest outside was actually coming in, so the defender on the inside stayed with that. And on the touchdown, it was Fuller, and then the guy who stayed with the out against Williams was Nelson, who was giving up like 6 inches in height, and he just went up and got it. I'm trying to remember how they lined up for the 2-point conversion. I can't remember if Fuller was on the inside. I think he probably was.
Fuller was on the inside.
Yeah,
Scandrick was on the outside.
Yeah, so, I mean, and if it's the same play, and assuming it's the same defense, you want to do it the same way, then Fuller should stay with the guy who breaks inside, even though he's not lined up furthest inside, and then Scandrick takes, Williams. At least that would make sense.
Williams up there. By the way, my favorite part today, talking with Eric Berry, I asked him, because he was really animated on the sideline during the 2-point conversion, and I said, what did you see there? And he just looks at me, he goes, they scored, and then laughed, and the interview was over shortly after that. So he
It's a conversation killer here.
It is.
2-point conversion is... Nobody wants to
stop the
go there.
2-point conversion, and we won't have to go there. Play defense, and we won't have to go
Hey,
there.
and all credit to the Chargers for running a 2-point conversion there,
Hey.
not kicking the extra point. They
Yeah.
I don't know what the reaction for the Chargers would have been if they had kicked the extra, or if it had been failed. A failed 2-point conversion there, would Chargers fans, assuming there are the San Diego Chargers fans.
Do y'all exist?
I understand that most of the Chargers fans are still in San Diego, not in LA. But anyway, would they have been up in arms about
Maybe
that?
in LA.
I wonder if they'd have been pretty ticked off about, a failed 2-point
I wonder
conversion
about
there.
that too. There's a big judging a decision by the result or the process, right? I thought it was like a no-brainer to go for it in that situation. I just didn't think you wanted to.
Kicker came on the field.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah,
And-
yeah. And it looked like Rivers was happy to go off the field.
Yeah.
Like that was just normal
All right, bye.
stuff. I just feel like you got to go. You got to go for it. I don't
2
think you want
yards.
to go into overtime.
2 yards to change everything.
Yeah, with that quarter, I mean, like the way that team's built, the advantage that you have against the Chiefs is when your offense is on the field and their defense is on the field, and this is a chance, like you said, 2 yards
Yeah.
with your offense against their defense. It's not 100%, but
And you lose
sure
the
as hell
coin.
take
You lose
that.
the coin flip in overtime, and Chiefs get it. They
Yep.
chances are they're going to
Yeah.
score a touchdown. And
Totally.
And I think Anthony Lynn is gone for a couple, if I remember hearing in the aftermath. And he's done some aggressive things like that when it's come down to the stretch, and whether it's go for 1, go for 2, he's gone for 2 a few times, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, people are giving us great questions today. Keep it up because, like the rest of you, I think we're all hitting that afternoon slump, or maybe just me. I'm the one moderating, so keep giving me things to talk about. Nathan asks, why was there not a defensive timeout then for the Chiefs during the 2-point conversion? Did they have any timeouts left in that moment? You want to fast forward
wanna
to
say they
Game
did,
Pass in that moment?
well, the Chargers took. Obviously, there was a timeout taken. It had to be the Chargers, right? Because they had enough time to have the kicker go on the field, come off the field, and run the play. I got the.
Chiefs have one timeout. Yep.
It's a good question why there wasn't a timeout.
Well, I mean,
That's bad.
a timeout.
Sorry. It's still bad after you watch it 35
So
times. It's
The question is, why wasn't there a timeout for what?
For the 2-point conversion, I believe.
Okay, so
so like you see
but-
how they're lined up, call
Yeah.
a timeout.
Oh,
Right.
well, that one, or well, yeah, okay. I was gonna say, is that like a preemptive? Like, because I don't think preemptively you don't assume that you guys are gonna blow the coverage. So I was gonna say, that's why there's no
you guys
timeout.
play.
The timeout is not like you don't take the timeout because you're like these guys are gonna screw this up. Now, if you wanted to play the whole basketball thing where you're the basketball thing was like, okay, how they line up and then come back to the sideline. I guess that you can make a case for that. But again, I mean, it was a play. It ended up being a play they saw before. Clearly, they had scouted it because of the way they defended the first time. I mean, they still gave up a touchdown, but they knew what they were doing.
Chiefs took a timeout after the touchdown and before the extra.
That's what I'm watching
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
The Chiefs took a timeout after the not after the touchdown, the play before the touchdown, after the penalty in the end zone, they moved
Yeah.
the ball
Yeah, their second time.
from the 10 to the 1.
Yeah, and the Chargers scored a touchdown on that first play
Yeah.
out of the timeout. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a case to be made to, make sure you can cross your T's and all that stuff, but I don't know. Is anybody convinced that
Well, but
that would have been different?
But we're saying at that point though that the timeout was already used then.
No.
They had one.
No, they
It-
still
it-
had
it-
one.
it-
They still
Chiefs had one left.
Yeah, it was used before the touchdown.
Yeah,
so they could have used
So they had
one.
another one after going
Yeah.
into 2.4. Okay.
Yep.
Here's another good question that Andrew asked that I think, Blair, you asked Andy about this earlier this week. Is this the type of team that will be galvanized by a loss like Thursday, or is it a team led by a 23-year-old quarterback that could fall apart down the stretch?
I think that's what Sunday's all about. To
Yeah.
me.
That's what- I think that's what we're gonna
That's
find
exactly
out.
what the Sunday game is about, and I'm fascinated because there was the third loss, obviously, but they didn't lose the first two like this. They were close games, close losses. Chiefs had a chance. They had the possession at the end in L.A. I don't remember how, for whatever reason, I can't remember how the Patriots game ended. With the Chiefs have the ball and
No, the
No, that
Patriots.
was
There was
last
a-
play was the field goal.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Last play
And they
field
had
goal.
they had a couple of completions to Gronk
That's
to
right.
extend the drive and to get in the field goal range.
Correct.
And that was it.
But this one,
That's right.
I mean, this is
Like,
such a gut wrenching loss to have a 2-touchdown lead with 4 minutes to go at
Yeah.
home and lose it, and then lose everything. I mean, lose AFC West, division lead, all that stuff that was there for him, and so that's what I did. That's why I asked Andy about the nature of the loss. Does it, how does your how does your locker room react to it, and we'll find out Sunday. I'm as curious as anything to find the answer to that question about how they play on Sunday. Because they're better than the Seahawks. This Chiefs team is better than the Seahawks team. Seahawks, terribly tough environment to win in up there. Night game, prime time, great atmosphere. But it's not the Seahawks team of 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Right.
And this is the best Chiefs team Andy Reid has had.
yeah, it is I believe that it's a good room. I think you guys agree with that. But I guess we'll see here because it's got some pieces that make it vulnerable to some fracture, right? Like when the offense is this good and the defense is this bad, it can be real easy to be like, what you guys doing over
Yeah.
there? You know what I mean?
How about even within the defense?
Yeah.
You've got
Right.
some really good.
Got
Yeah.
Chris
defensive-
Jones up
yes.
front,
Yeah.
killing
Yes.
it, and
Ford on the edge. You got some guys that are
Yeah.
really playing well,
Yeah.
and you get some other
Yeah.
guys not so much.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I really, I don't know, maybe I'm being naive or whatever, but I think it's a good room. I'd be surprised if they go up there and just have given up. If they,
yeah.
I'd be really surprised if that loss broke them, I'm
Broke
not
the
making a joke,
spirit
but
and-
broke them spiritually. Yeah,
right.
just-
It's been tough to get a read on that locker room though because hardly anybody's been in there this week.
yeah, it has been soft. Yeah.
It's been really tough. They did kind of start up a mini basketball game today with Patrick and Chase Litton and Garrick Dieter, but
That's probably a good sign, actually.
yeah,
to
that
do
they're
something-
still
do
playing
this-
around.
Yeah.
But it has been weird. Like we still haven't talked to 3 Pro Bowlers: Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and D Ford. Kind of strange. Talked to Mitchell Schwartz today. He wasn't around yesterday because he didn't practice yesterday. He
Because
had
of the injury,
a
right.
knee injury that we knew nothing about go before Wednesday. And then when we asked him about it today, he was kind of vague about it. It was pretty interesting. So I don't know how serious that injury is. But yeah, it is. I think that we're going to learn a lot on Sunday that about this team that we haven't had to learn yet because
Right. They haven't been in this position.
Exactly. Well, and as somebody said too, I think it was after the Chargers lost that it felt like the first real loss of the season because the other two losses, there were things to take from it. It was kind of upbeat. They were shootouts. They were great games, and this was just a collapse.
Started to see some of the Patrick Mahomes criticism too a little bit, like who's he beating? Who is it?
Yeah.
And can he win on the prime? Can he win prime time games? And
Did y'all miss the other primetime games that they won?
And what's also
Or
true,
did he
like
beat-
who have they beaten? They literally beat that team.
That team.
It's been a minute, but they did
Right,
win that
they
game.
They actually led that team for all but 4 seconds of 2 games this year.
Yeah. I think the difference is the Patriots game. They were down. Was it 21-3?
24-9 at half.
24-9.
Yeah, 24-9.
And so that was that comeback in Foxborough against Hall of Fame
To take the lead.
Yeah, and it was like a valiant effort, and the Rams had some of that too. I mean, there were so many mistakes, the fumbles,
Overcoming
that second
6
interception
turnovers.
was just brutal. But yeah, there was a little bit of a man. We really gave a good effort, and this was like the opposite of a good effort.
Right.
Those last two, that was just limp. Those last 2 drives. I mean, there was just easy pickings.
Well, and I also figure, with Seattle, you could have a game where they don't come out and just lay an egg and still lose. Like that, to me, that's still on the table.
Yeah,
like
they can play well.
Yeah, and still lose. Because Seattle, again, maybe not the Seattle of past, but like the Rams, they gave a game that took down to the wire. And I think it was like a field goal game, if I remember right, with Seattle and the Rams. They've played some teams tough, and they're inconsistent. Last week they lose to the 49ers. So you don't know what you're going to get coming out of the box, but they could play well and still lose. I don't think that's a
Well, the Ravens game was a coin flip game, and they happened to win that game.
Hey, they've got the right side of the coin.
Right. Chargers game, coin flip game. Rams, Patriots, coin flip game. Steelers was at the end, a coin flip game, and they had enough of a lead to withstand the Steelers comeback. So a lot of those games against the better opponents have been these coin flip type games. I agree. I think the Seahawks is that type of game. But in between the 2 Chargers touchdown drives in the fourth quarter was the Chiefs' offensive possession that was.
Yes.
It's like I didn't think this team was incapable of not
Right.
picking up a first down.
Yeah, and in that situation when you have to have it,
Yeah.
we've been talking a lot about the defense before Thursday. Had made a habit of coming up with a play when it was needed, at least
Yeah.
a not all the time, but a representative period of the time, and that was just like. Not a touchdown. You don't need a touchdown, but
No,
just
you need
one
first
first down makes it
Yeah.
really, really hard on the Chargers. 2
Right.
ends the game.
Right.
And they were 3 and out.
with penalties.
Yes,
That's the
yes.
thing to me is because I've heard at least a lot of people talking about the conservative play calling, and I'm wondering to myself, I'm not sure how much I feel like it's the play calling, because I think part of it was, okay, they forced them to use 2 timeouts, which if they throw incomplete passes and you don't force them to use timeouts, then people are ripping, the coaches, Andy and the coaching staff for that. Like, how could you not at least make them use the timeouts? So they did that. The penalties, they had 3rd and 8, and then you get a penalty, it makes it 3rd and 13. So the yardage that you did gain, you gave right back because Demetrius Harris jumps off sides. Yeah. So I'm not sure how much of it I put on the play calling. It's just, flat out they didn't make the plays that I guess we sort of maybe have taken for granted that 3rd and 13, Pat's gonna pick that up.
Right.
He's gonna make something happen.
Yeah.
But then who was it? Ingram comes through with a sack. And
Yeah. I think there's a case to be made though too about in that situation because of just the specific makeup of this team, that the offense is this good and the defense is this bad, that your thinking needs to change. And it doesn't matter if you make the Chargers waste timeouts, or not waste, but use timeouts. Because if they get the ball back, they're still going against that same defense. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, you need to put every single ounce of, resource into getting first downs. That's your defense. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know how much sense it makes for this group as a collective to, help the defense with just marginal things like, well, now they don't have as many timeouts,
Yeah,
that'll help. But
Well,
they
you
still
can also.
can't defend.
It seems like you can also make the case like, well, if that defense is what you think it is and just needs all the help you can get, then running time off the clock is also helping that defense. Like they need every last second of,
Right, but
of help.
I think the priority needs to be even more on just the yardage, and it doesn't matter. Like making them use timeouts is not a moral victory for the offense. You know what I mean? I almost like my standard for that, like expectation for that defense is so low that if you give them the ball back, that's on you. You know what I mean? Because the offense is that good,
Man.
that you can expect that.
I want to know how many times. I haven't looked this up. I meant to, and I just haven't gotten to it. How many times the Chiefs had 5 sacks in that game, right? And Chris Jones had 2.5 of the 5. How many times did the Chiefs have a sack on a series, and the Chargers still picked up a first down after the sack? After the sack, Chiefs make it 2nd and 13 or whatever, or 2nd and 16, and the Chargers still got a first down on that. That I'm sure it just drove Bob Sutton nuts and defensive coaches nuts that they gave up big plays after getting big plays.
Yeah.
I feel like now's an important time for me to apologize to John Sleezer, who's behind the camera, who I promised up and down, this will be a short 30-minute Facebook Live, but we've barely touched on what they're going to do against Seattle. So let's do some of that, because we've had lots of questions about it. The first one from Jack: what will the Chiefs do to stop the Seahawks run, and specifically Russell Wilson, in this game? Anybody want to phone a friend or call?
Score a touchdown.
Call Bob
Chiefs are gonna have
Sutton
to-
here.
Chiefs are going to score touchdowns to. I think that's the best.
The
way
best
to do
defense
it,
is their
to-
offense.
is to get ahead and stay
Get
ahead.
ahead. That would be the best way to stop the running game. Otherwise, it's going to
Yeah.
be
NFL's best rushing offense.
Yeah, Chris Carson is on track to be the Seahawks' first 1,000-yard rusher since Marshawn Lynch in 2014.
I think it's accurate to say that Eric Berry might be their best run defender. If he plays 80-90% of the snaps, he can make a difference. It's a horrendous matchup, right? Just a horrendous matchup. That rush offense against this rush defense. But I don't know. I think Eric Berry can make something.
That tackle he made
near the
the
goal
goal line
Yep.
before the Chargers scored. On the
Yep.
play before the Chargers
Yep.
scored.
That was
That's
beautiful.
man, I haven't seen that all year. You can do that? that can happen?
Yeah.
What does tackling look like?
Safety can come up. That was a great play.
I've never seen that before.
I think that's one of those things where people keep, whether it's Twitter or where else, talk about the Barry Lucas safeties that they keep like, we want to see that, we want to see that. I feel like the one thing that you would get out of that is guys who would come up and support the run and help that middle of that defense where teams have been able to gain yards just going right at them. I don't think we're going to see it, but I think that's one of the things that you could take from that group if you ever got a Barry Lucas. I think
Jordan
he
Lucas
probably-
plays on defense? I haven't seen him out there in so long. I forgot.
Oh, the folks on Twitter have not forgotten.
No, they have not. Michael has
that
asked
folks on
the Twitter coaches. Michael's asked a couple good questions. He asked if the game philosophy for this is similar to Baltimore, and if anyone is going to spy on Wilson.
Andy got asked earlier this week if Tremont Smith was going to, because Tremont Smith replicated Lamar Jackson in practice. Said the difference is, like Tremont Smith couldn't throw, right? Russell Wilson can throw the ball, so they
Right.
probably haven't used a lot of Smith, just maybe in spots in practice this week. Russell Wilson's a bigger threat than Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
A Super Bowl winning quarterback is more of a threat than a first year, half season starting quarterback for the Ravens. He's going to be.
He's dynamic.
He is.
He's
You remember his breakout game?
Yeah.
His breakout game was right here at Arrowhead's third preseason game of 2012
Yeah.
or something. Wow. Nobody knew he was this good and
Yeah.
could do this, and he just
I remember watching that
crushed
game
the
too,
Chiefs.
and just thinking, how bad is the Chiefs' defense? They can't stop this 5'9" rookie. Oops.
Had a lot of those moments this week. Brian asked, who will get the bulk of the carries for the Chiefs on Sunday, and will we see Sharkhandrick at all? I tried to ask Andy about this, but then he thought I said that Kelvin Benjamin was a running back, and I don't know really what he was saying.
I think the running back position's been okay.
Yeah.
You know, without Kareem
Yes.
Hunt,
I kinda
that's
think-
not been an issue.
No.
Just to see Darrell Ward's Williams score on the
Mm-hmm.
pass, to see the shiftiness of Damian Williams and Spencer Ware's, off the injury
Mm-hmm.
report, right? He's going to play. I think their committee's going to be fine.
Yeah, I don't know that I would start anybody on the Chiefs in
On
fantasy
fantasy,
and running
right.
back because it'll be a more.
fantasy question.
Yeah, just gonna let you guys know. It's gonna be a running back by committee situation.
Andy seemed to also, because I think at one point there was the question about the two of them, if like you're talking about Williams and I guess it was Williams and Ware, and whether or not they would split time now that Spencer seemed like he was going to be back. And he didn't say no. He talked. It seemed like he talked a lot about what Williams had done this last game, almost as though it might be more of a split between those two than Spencer doing most of it and then Williams spelling them. It
Right.
sounded like you're going to see some Damian Williams because he looked pretty good.
They really like him. I was wondering, sort of in the wake of the Kareem Hunt stuff, I heard some people in the building talking up Damian Williams, about he could be a good player. And you always kind of really like, come on now. you know,
Right.
But
He's okay.
he's legit.
I remember
He's a good
talking
player.
to GM Brett Veach about him in the preseason during training camp and asked, why him? Why'd they bring him in? And he said, well, they go through and evaluate all this tape, and they were looking for a basement bargain, and said that evaluating his tape, he looked like he could be a situational starter. And that's kind of what he's done, and I think he's played really well. And I like too that he sees a lot of himself in Darrell Williams, and not only kind of how they play, but in their stories. They're scrappy, they're undrafted guys. So I think it helps too to have those two guys in the same locker room, same position group. Their lockers are right next to each other, so I think that they're kind of helping each other out. I would love to talk to Darrell Williams about that, but he's been shifty on the field and off of it. So we have not had a chance to talk to him recently.
Well, and I think Darrell's another guy that they like too. I mean, he's let's put it this way. I believe, and I've been told they held on to him for a reason. Let's put it that way, because he was not active for the first 9 games.
For a long time, yeah.
But they decided, and remember, they let Ward go during training camp. A guy who'd been here, who knew the offense and everything. They let him go because they knew he was not going to beat out, or they were going to keep the young guy who hadn't been drafted, but who they felt like was going to be, could have been a draft pick, fits the mold of what Veach has said in the past. They're looking for the big backs who can catch the ball. I think they like Darrell Ward, and you've asking a little bit about him this week. You heard Andy in here say some good things about him and how he's been impressive. So I think that's another guy. I think they feel like they're okay with that spot.
The question is, would Kareem or the threat of Kareem Hunt have made a difference on the Chiefs' last offensive possession?
Yeah, I think so.
In a 2-minute offense, or when you need to have a first down,
Yep.
would that have made a difference?
That's a fair question. They struggled in that situation with him at times, but yeah,
Yeah, I
I wonder
think so
about that
too.
for sure.
Nathan asked, will the rain affect someone like Mahomes that has such a strong arm? You know what? I have not heard a single question this week asked about rain and wet footballs and all that good stuff. So,
Have they played a rain game yet? Have they played?
didn't
No,
it?
because the
yeah, it
defense
rained.
has, but the offense hasn't.
Justin's our photographer.
It stopped raining the second Mahomes got on the field.
Yeah.
and the sun came through the clouds. You remember that? Or
I just
shined
opened
bright on
up.
his helmet?
Yeah.
There's been a couple of games where there's been like rain during parts of the game. Because I feel like, was it the Jaguars? Was that the game
Yes.
where it rained during part of that game? And
John's
then,
back here nodding his head, and
Yeah.
he would know because he would have to be in rain gear on the sideline.
yeah,
So
yeah. And then
he's our guy.
I'm trying to remember, did the game in Denver, was there weather early in that game, or am I mixing that up with something else?
Well, there's always weather. But
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're going to get Seattle weather, December Seattle weather for Sunday night, and it's going to be wet.
yes, so bring your rain gear if you're going to the game.
It says 60% rain Sunday night,
Yeah.
41 degrees.
Yuck. Lovely.
That'll
Can't
change.
wait.
That'll change by tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll change in an hour. Let's see.
Andy Reid's going to throw the ball. Let's put it that way. Whether it affects him or not, they're still throwing the ball.
Yeah, exactly. You can't not. Let's go ahead and get to predictions. So we will not be as long because we'll be putting this on the podcast, and then in the second half of it, I talked with Seattle Times Seahawks beat writer Bob Condotta, I'm just say everybody's names wrong. He was great talking with him this morning, and he has more intel on the Seahawks. Talked for about 20 minutes, so get excited for that, for all your other Seahawks questions and guys to watch. I have already written down my prediction. No one cheat. I've said it. No, I have said it two other. I wrote it in hot pink because boys can't see hot pink. That's what I was told. Anyway, so Blair, what's your score prediction? How do you think this is going to shake out?
I'll tell you what. I want to take the Seahawks. I want to take the Seahawks prime time in that environment. I'm gonna go Chiefs. I'm gonna go Chiefs 30 to 27. Yeah, 30-27.
Lynn, what you got?
I'll go Chiefs 31-28.
Sam.
Horrendous matchup. I feel exactly like Blair.
Yeah.
I think
exactly like Blair.
if the Seahawks maybe had one more win, if they were not, they're not.
I don't think they're
Chiefs
good
are the
enough.
better team.
Yeah, and I expect this team, the Chiefs, to bounce back. Like 31-26.
I'm so proud of you guys for not copying me this week. I agree with all you guys. I picked the Chiefs on the radio earlier this week and kind of felt weird doing it because I do feel like, 'cause it's like you, I mean, it's a horrendous matchup. It seems like the Seahawks should win, but I just don't think that they're the better team.
Seems like it's hard to say that seems like they can win.
I don't
lost to the
know.
49ers, though. That makes it a little harder to say that.
I don't know. I have a weird feeling about this game, but I still pick the Chiefs 28-24. And someone's trying to break into this room. I don't.
Okay. It's like a dog running into a glass door.
I feel like we should sign off now before we get taken out and somebody breaks down the door. I didn't know that our predictions were so offensive. So, on that note, we're going to sign off. We'll be back. It'll be a late night from Seattle. Kickoff's at 5:20 there, 7:20 here. So, we'll be on air, online, over your airwaves, whatever, by 2 a.m. So, drink your caffeine, stay up late, chat with us then. Until then, you can follow all of our work on kansascity.com, Facebook page, Twitter, you name it, you can follow us. So, see you later. Welcome back to Sports Beat KC. I'm Chiefs beat writer Brooke Pryor, and on the phone with me, we have Seattle Times Seahawks beat writer Bob Condotta. Bob, how are things out in Seattle right now? I know it's a little early. It's about 10 o'clock Thursday while we're recording Kansas City time. A couple hours earlier where you are out in Seattle.
Yeah, it's a typical, looks like a typical day for the Seattle December day. The cliche Seattle day with rain and all that. So, yeah, kind of that. We've had a lot of stormy weather. I got to admit, I don't know exactly what the forecast is for Sunday night, but it's been kind of windy and stormy here this week. So the conditions may play a little bit of a factor Sunday night.
Yeah, I was surprised. We talked with Andy Reid yesterday, and he didn't get one question about preparing to play with wet footballs, although, hey, that could maybe come Friday when we talk to him for 2 minutes. It looks like, according to my iPhone, it's going to be rainy with a high of 49 on Sunday. Although I feel like I've checked the forecast every day and it shifts every day. So may not be the most beautiful football weather, but it'll be Seattle football weather on Sunday night. And this is a game that, looking at the schedule, and even a couple weeks ago, we thought may not have major implications for either team. Instead, what we're going to get is a pretty big-time Sunday night matchup. Bob, what's on the line for the Seahawks this week in this game?
Yeah, well, they need to win one of their last two games to clinch a playoff spot. There's a scenario where, depending on other things that happen, they could know by Sunday night that if they beat the Chiefs, they could clinch a playoff spot. There are also scenarios where beating the Chiefs isn't enough to do it because of NFC conference tiebreakers and specifically involving Washington. So they might have to wait until the following week against Arizona, but to know for sure they can get that done. But it's sort of remote. If they beat the Chiefs, they're in really good shape, especially with Arizona and with the team they should be able to beat. So, that's sort of the thing. If you lose to Kansas City, they can't clinch a spot by losing. I mean, there's those scenarios where they lose and other teams lose around them and they clinch one. So then they would know going into that final week against Arizona that they've got to win that game. And as bad as Arizona is, division games can always be tricky as the Seahawks find out.
Right, absolutely. And the Seahawks are coming off
You never want to have to do that before. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, and the Seahawks are coming off of a loss to the 49ers, kind of an emotional loss, similar to the one the Chiefs had against the Chargers. How is this team rebounding this week? What kind of things are they saying in the availabilities that you've had with them?
Yeah, it was a weird scenario that they played the 49ers twice in 15 days. That had never happened in Seahawks history before, where they played 2 games, that close like that. And, they had beaten the 49ers on the scoreboard really easily 2 weeks prior, but they had given up a lot of yards. They'd given up 300 passing yards to Nick Mullins in the second half of that game. And so I think the 49ers entered that game feeling sort of confident that they could still get some things done because of the way the first game had gone. It was just sort of a game that went back and forth a little bit. The Seahawks could never really get a complete handle on putting them away, and it ended up in overtime. And, one of the big sequences was just early. The Seahawks score early and sort of look like, okay, they're rolling, and then they give up a kickoff return for a touchdown, which Sebastian Janikowski sort of just waved away at the returner, and that sort of set the tone for the day. Seahawks got called for a bunch of holding penalties late in the game, which is sort of a new NFL trend for that to happen, but the Seahawks fell victim to that. They had a couple other penalties, the real key defensive pass interference on the last drive, and so I think they're kind of kicking themselves a little bit, feeling like it was really a game that was there for the taking, and they kind of let it slip away. And but I think this team still feels good about itself because there's I think there's a danger of overplaying the skepticism about Seattle this year. But I think most people still thought this was like a 7, 8, 9 win kind of team. People just weren't thinking they had a chance to win the division for the most part, but still, getting a playoff spot would be a little bit unexpected based on what the overall expectations were. And so I think that's just still the focus when you've got that carried out in front of you. I think they're moving on pretty quickly from last week and just realizing, we can't linger in that. We've got to just win one of these last 2 games to get into the playoffs. And winning both is obviously even better.
Yeah, you mentioned the penalties that the Seahawks had, and Andy Reid actually opened up his press conference this week talking about all the penalties the Chiefs had. The Chiefs are the most penalized team in the NFL. They average about 9 penalties a game for 73 yards. And the Seahawks, I believe, had 14 penalties for a team record 148 yards last week. Has that been something that's been addressed this week as a major issue? And are we just going to see flag after flag after flag on Sunday night? Should we settle in for one of those games?
Well, so the Seahawks had 10 of them after halftime, so that the second half and then overtime, and so it really kind of caught up there. It was one of those things where it almost sort of snuck up on everybody. I remember we got back to the press box, and that was a team record yards, because it kind of just the way the game, when games end in overtime and they just end kind of thing. Sometimes they get the stats can suddenly kind of sneak up on you a little bit, but for sure it's been addressed. They had 4 holding penalties on their last 4 offensive drives. And, other people nationally have sort of written about this, that the NFL, for some reason, sort of decided 3 weeks ago to emphasize holding penalties and want to sort of clean that aspect of it up a little bit. And so there's been a spike in holding penalties around the league. The Seahawks have really seen that, particularly in both their games against the 49ers, even in that first game that they won pretty easily. It was a little bit of a sloppy game in that regard. And they had some things like that happen. So, it's for sure. I talked to some of the offensive linemen yesterday about the offensive line coach, and, they said they just have to realize that the NFL is looking at that particular penalty more closely, and they just got to do the things they can and not get caught. So, but it's interesting, you talk about the Chiefs leading the NFL in penalties. The Seahawks have always been, several years under Pete Carroll have led the NFL in penalties, and they've always been a fairly highly penalized team. They cut that down a little bit this year, but, in general, Pete sort of doesn't think like it's the biggest predictive stat for success. There's a lot of penalties that are sort of just based on the nature of how aggressively you play, and, there's a danger in taking that aggression out of your team. So they've always been happy to live with some, but holding penalties in particular are sort of a penalty that there's not a real big positive to getting called for a holding penalty, that you're not maybe going to create a turnover or something, because you play aggressively and get away with it or something like that necessarily. So it's definitely something that I know they're working on this week.
Right, and looking at the offensive line, looks like there's some questions at right guard with DJ Fluker's missed the last 2 games. He was replaced by Jordan Simmons, who then got hurt and then was replaced by Ethan Posich. I thought I knew how.
Yeah,
Posich.
Posich.
There we go.
Yeah.
I thought I was pronouncing it right in my head, and then my mouth just couldn't make that translate. And then it looked like he's one of the guys that was called for some of those holding penalties in the fourth quarter of that game. But what kind of sense do you get of where the offensive line is going into this game? Do you know at this point who will be at right guard? Do the Seahawks know who's going to be at right guard?
Yeah, I don't know if the Seahawks know yet. I think if Fluker could come back, that would be the ideal scenario. I think they have to prepare for him not to be back. I think they'll give Posick. I think other than the penalties, he might have played okay. But, it is kind of hard when you only are out there for a few series and you get called for 2 holding penalties, especially sort of when they came. I think that's sort of a hard thing to swallow. But, the offensive line otherwise has sort of been a pleasant surprise. And the other 4 spots have been really stable this year. It's just been the right guard spot because of the injuries to DJ Fluker that has been an issue. So, unfortunately, Fluker himself has been one of the real surprise players of the season. Kind of a guy who's bounced around the last few years. And, I don't know how high expectations were, but he was really regarded as when he kind of came off a preseason injury and he started playing in week 3 as one of the reasons why their run offense really took off in week 3. And, they've been leading the NFL in rushing offense basically ever since. But Jordan Simmons has been a real pleasant surprise and had been playing really well also. And then he went down with the injury that is going to knock him out for the season. So that sort of has continued the carousel. But Ethan Posick was a 2nd-round pick last year, began the season at starting guard on the other side. And so I don't know that they'll completely give up on him quite yet. I guess if I had to bet, I think it's one of those 2 guys just based on if Fluker's healthy. But they sort of held out the option yesterday of looking at some other options as well. So, we'll see by the end of the week if they made a roster move that addresses that anyway.
Mm-hmm. And running behind them is Chris Carson. He's on track to be Seattle's first 1,000-yard rusher since Marshawn Lynch in 2014. He had 119 yards in the overtime loss to the 49ers. What is it about him that he's been able to be so successful this year and work out so well for the Seahawks?
Yeah, well, he's just such a tough runner, and he's such an athletic runner. You can go find, he's had 3 or 4 real notable hurdles over guys this year. A good one, week 1 at Denver, where he just amazing hurdle over a guy for a 24-yard gain. He's had a few since then. So he really just combines athleticism and size and a real instinct for kind of knowing where the hole is. He had a great run last week on a 4th down. Interestingly, he said later he sort of wasn't completely aware it was 4th down. But at the time, it looked like, he's going to do whatever it takes to get in the end zone. And he did on a 4th and 1 play and got some help from his offensive lineman and everything. But it was sort of a play indicative. I mean, he got hit a couple times, looked like he was stopped, just sort of kept his feet moving forward and was able to power his way into the end zone and get a much-needed touchdown for Seattle at the time. So, he's been real good. They have been getting some good play out of Rashad Penny, the first-round pick of late, but out right now. I don't know if he'll be able to play this week or not. So that's sort of put a little bit more of the onus on Carson to kind of really be the guy there. And there's one of the things a little bit I think worried is just Carson has had a lot of carries this year. They're not going to win the division, so they're going to have to play a playoff game that first week if they get in it. So, but you got to get in the playoffs first and do what it takes to get there. So.
Right. Well, the Chiefs obviously have a multitude of defensive issues. Looking at the Seahawks offense, what strengths are they going to be able to play to? How do you expect them to try to go at this Chiefs defense that kind of has issues across the board?
Yeah, and I think because of that, maybe the Seahawks will sort of just do what they do. I think they'll really try to get the running game going. They signed made kind of an interesting signing this week. Bo Scarborough, pretty well-known college guy at Alabama, hasn't played in the NFL yet. Has been on the practice squads of Dallas, Jacksonville this year. They signed him off Jacksonville. I think that was to just kind of beef up the running back depth with Penny's situation uncertain. But I don't know if they vary greatly from what they do. their passing game has been a little bit hit and miss of late. Russell Wilson is still having a really good year statistically, especially in terms of his efficiency and throwing touchdowns and stuff like that. But Doug Baldwin has always been one of their top receivers. Has really battled through an injury-filled year, and that's really seemed to impact the passing game in a few games when, if he's not out there, not out there completely healthy, and having to try to depend on some of the younger guys a little bit. So it's been a little bit sporadic of late, the passing game, which is why I think it's put even more onus on them to get the running game going and make sure they can get that done. But they've been really consistent running the ball, especially since, like I say, week 3. It's really been something they've been able to rely on. So I don't know if I feel very greatly from their overall strategy of that, but I think they know Kansas City is going to score some points on them. So I do think one of the things that you could probably expect out of the Seahawks is just I guess there's two ways you can look at that. Like, you want to run the ball and take 10 minutes off the clock every time you have it. If you think you're going to have trouble stopping the team. On the other hand, if you know you got to get points, trying to catch them off guard with some big plays in the passing game. So I think it'll be sort of the usual mix of Seattle with those two things.
Gotcha. And going over to the other side of the ball, there have been some significant injuries on the defensive side. Bradley McDougald, KJ Wright. Which one of these injuries seems like it could have the biggest impact, or KJ Wright coming back from injury? Where do you see that kind of shaking out?
Yeah, I think the McDougald thing's a bigger deal right now, and not to diminish KJ Wright's return, but he's only played in really about 2.5 games this season. So I think he can help them quite a bit, especially if he is healthy. We talked to him yesterday, and he insisted he was he feels like he'll be the healthiest back mid-season, tried to play. I think of those two, I think Bradley McDougald is a little bit more potentially impactful for this game because he's played every game this year. He's been another guy that has gotten a lot of credit for, maybe playing a little bit better than people had anticipated he might, which became a really big deal when Earl Thomas went out early in the season. McDougald really helped solidify the secondary, but he's had a knee injury that he's played with most of the season, but it seemed to really catch up to him in the last few weeks. He's been on the injury report a lot. He's had 2 games basically since November that he hasn't been able to finish because of it, and they left it unclear whether he'll be able to play this week. So, if he can't play, a guy named Delano Hill, the pick out of Michigan last year, would make his first career start. Hill's played a few snaps a few times this year when Dougal has been out, but he hasn't, never started a game and had to go the whole way and sort of be the guy that maybe opponents could try to pick on a little bit that way, no one going into the game. So that's definitely a really big thing to watch. KJ Wright has only played maybe about 2.5 games this season, and so he can help a lot. They sort of cobbled together a weak side linebacker thing all year, even without it, but it became a bigger issue last week when they lost Michael Kendricks for the year. He had played really well when he was playing, so they do want KJ Wright back for sure, but KJ said by his own admission yesterday he wouldn't anticipate playing the full game probably if he plays Sunday, that they'd probably rotate him in a little bit, probably with a guy named Austin Colicchio who started a few games there as well. KJ said sort of the goal would be that he kind of ease into it a little bit in these first 2 games with the assumption you hope that they make the playoffs, and then he could be maybe fully ready for that.
Mm-hmm. And for the Seahawks to slow the Chiefs down and slow Patrick Mahomes down, who on the defensive side, maybe 1 or 2 guys, has to have a good game?
Yeah, well, Tedrick Thompson, their free safety, this really feels like a game where he's had to step in for Earl Thomas, and those are impossible shoes to fill. And there's no way there's not going to be a drop off there. I think the Seahawks have altered their scheme a tiny little bit to not. Earl Thomas basically was just single high safety an awful lot of the time, and sort of almost constantly the last line of defense. And I think the Seahawks haven't done that quite as much with Thompson, and maybe tried to disguise it a little bit more at times to maybe make it harder for opponents to maybe just kind of try to target that. But the things the Chiefs do and the way Patrick Mahomes can scramble and make plays and things like that, I think there's going to be a huge bonus on Thompson to be able to keep things in front of him, not let receivers get behind him, and then be a sure tackler. He's had a couple of instances where he's missed some tackles. The Chiefs obviously have some fast guys and guys that like to get out in space, so I think that's going to be a really big deal. I would say a couple of defensive linemen, I guess particularly Frank Clark. He's had a really good year as a defensive end. career high in sacks. This is a game where I think you're going to have to try to get pressure on Mahomes, obviously, and also kind of keep contain on him and keep him from, if he is kind of running and getting out there, that he's not going he's not getting too far.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we let you go, got to make sure we get a game prediction in here, score prediction. So how do you think this game is going to shake out on Sunday, and what's your pick for that final score?
Yeah, I think I will pick the Chiefs. Probably about 31-23, something like that. I mean, I think it'll probably be a fairly high-scoring game. The Seattle defense has been a little bit vulnerable at times, but the Seahawks have been able to score some in general as well, and against that Chiefs defense. So that maybe sounds like a realistic pick to me. Okay.
I think earlier this week I was on the radio and I picked the Chiefs to win 28-24, so I'm going to stay consistent and go with that. I think it's going to be a pretty close game, although for deadline's sake, man, I hope that it's not a one-possession game right there at the end, but that's the way that it's gone for us the last couple weeks. So, and I was looking at the stats, and it looks like the Seahawks are 11-2 in home Sunday Night Football games since 2006. What do you think the atmosphere is going to be like in Seattle on Sunday night?
Yeah, and they've actually been great under Pete Carroll on prime time, and you can look up all those stats, and it should be the usual really good atmosphere that way. I mean, Christmas weekend and a Sunday night game, and against a team that we don't see that often, and then a team that also is a team that's got an awful lot of publicity this year, and I think there's a lot of excitement maybe to see Patrick Mahomes play. It's interesting. I think the fan base probably, I think from the standpoint of if you, I guess, want the best out of for the Seahawks, you maybe hope Kansas City had nothing to play for, but I think there's a little bit of an intrigue value too, and being a Coach fan, at least this way we get to see, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs trying as hard as they need to try, and then if you beat them, maybe it makes it that much more of a game.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Can you let people know where they can follow your work to keep tabs on the Seahawks the rest of this week?
Sure, yeah, SeattleTimes.com and then /Seahawks. We have a separate Seahawks page there with all of our Seahawks coverage, and I'm also on Twitter at B Condotta, so BCONDOTTA, and so you can follow me there as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I guess we will see you Sunday night in Seattle.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, Brooke.